What is up, guys? Welcome to another video. This is the last news video before Heart of Thorns. The majority of my channel, most of this year, has been news for an upcoming expansion, and this is the last one. So I did want to leave this as close as possible to the launch of the game. The devs have made mainly a lot of red posts, so these are posts on the forums rather than really big official statements about things, but a few things have come out of the woodworks, a few little more tidbits about the way Heart of Thorns will run that I wanted to keep you guys in the loop on. Footage will be hopefully something relevant. How about some of the first footage I ever captured for Heart of Thorns back when I went to Brighton for the weekend to playtest some of the earliest stuff? In fact, over these past few days, because we are so close to release now, not tomorrow, but the day after, we'll be playing Heart of Thorns, they've been doing countdown blog posts with general recaps of information we already know, but in a few instances, some new screenshots, like one of them on the raid post, for example, showed off another angle of an area of the raid we haven't seen so far. So hopefully that stuff will be running by there, and let's just jump into it, because some of this has been fairly controversial too, and I want to have a bit of a discussion on it. So, first of all, something completely badass and out of the blue is a change to the way minions work for Heart of Thorns. Now, remember the last beta? I did a bit of a discussion on this when we were in the thick of talking about raids, and specifically there was something going on in those raids. I never realized, but actually apparently this was happening everywhere in the beta areas, even in open world Verdant Brink and the story instance we could play too. And this was that minions were invulnerable. They weren't dying. Now, minions that degened health, like Jagged Horrors from Necromancers, or Shambling Horrors as we also now have, but other stuff wasn't taking any damage. I knew about this specifically for the raid, and I thought, oh, this could be a raid-specific mechanic that is hopefully encouraging these kinds of minion builds. And, well, I was kind of halfway right. So, the goal of ArenaNet isn't to make minions invulnerable from now on, but they did want to push the minions into an extreme scenario, like them being invulnerable, to see how the community would react, to see if they were totally exploitable and bugged and usable in some horrific way. And so when I say minions, I don't just mean, Necromancer minions. I mean any summoned AI at all. Ranger pets, gyros, turrets, even a lot of racial skills that you currently don't see people use at all because they get cleaved down too quickly, even balance for their immense cooldowns. Even these things were under that effect too. And so it's not ArenaNet's plan to make them totally invulnerable, but as of what they saw on that beta, they have decided to push a big change to the way they take damage. So that change is this, that if a minion is being directly targeted by an enemy in PvE, if it is under its sight on its crosshair, okay, so say I'm an elementalist, I summon my rock golem to take aggro from something. While it has aggro, my rock golem takes 100% normal damage, and it will die at a normal pace, nothing has changed. But if the rock golem isn't actually being targeted by that enemy, and instead it's getting hit by, say, cleaving attacks, big AoEs, accidental things that enemies are using and just happen to be hitting your minion or your pet or whatever, it will now, instead of taking full damage, take 95% less damage. And that goes for condition damage too. So actually you could have a summon that gets targeted by an enemy, gets condied the crap out of. Now that's very rare obviously because we don't see many condies in PvE anyway. But that could happen, and then you could cause the boss to retarget, and then it's taking 95% diminished condition damage too. What this basically means is cleaving and accidental stuff, which comprises the majority of the kills that occur to your minions, no longer will be happening. If you're trying to use a minion to take aggro in some significant way, there is no change, and so it's not really heavily exploitable, but your minions will be far more sustaining now, and hopefully be a lot more useful. This combined with just that amazing new Reaper skill Rise, I'm really looking forward to playing a lot more minion builds, and I might even consider some of these racial abilities that I haven't looked at for God knows how long. And don't try to just think about this as open world. Think about maybe this might have a place in some raid, very high pressure raid areas, or high scale fractals at that. Super excited about the change. I'm sure rangers are thinking about, don't you have a trait now that means you take ridiculously diminished damage while your pet's at very high health? And now that's just almost going to be like a flat change for you if you run your bear. Oh, it's going to be brilliant. Two smaller things that I want to roll through, but nonetheless are important enough to me to deserve a spot in this video. Number one is an icon change for Engineer Profession icon. And theoretically, I think as well, they said the Tempest, the Regular Elementalist, the Engineer, and the Scrapper. I think all these icons, people, even before you look at the Elite Specializations in Guilders 2, have confused the Engineer icon and the Elementalist icon. One's like a flame, one's a grenade. Basically, one is just like, looks very much like the other when they're on a small UI scale. It's just tilted slightly, and it can be very easy to confuse them. This has been exacerbated with the new squad UI, where you can scale 50 people in a party to be very small, and then you really can't tell from that distance whether you've got, you know, 5 engineers in a subgroup or whether you've got 4 engineers and a single elementist, right? So they're changing the icon, making it a little bit more usable, making the engineer look a bit more distinct, and I believe some of these other icons may be getting a slight change too. The other big thing for Rangers, again, that I think a lot of people are looking forward to, was the Druid obviously now has access to the Staff, right? Well, the other instances of Staff being added to other specializations in Guild Wars 2 so far, Ventari and with the Daredevil, they're melee Staff users, and it seems that ArenaNet, when they made the Druid, they just decided to use the melee Staff animations as well, which was a kind of a cool flavor idea. You know, I think in terms of just, oh, this is something slightly different about the Druid, why not? It was an interesting thought, but a lot of Druids were saying, hey, look, I'm a backline caster guy. Can I please just have the regular animations? ArenaNet agreed, and that's been changed as well for when Heart of Thorns comes in. Final very little thing that I want to talk about for this video is the butterfly wings are finally in the gem store. I thought these were going to be Halloween items, but they're not. So if you saw that data mining ages ago of these really pretty little butterfly wings and you wanted them, don't worry, they're not like the Raven wings or any of these other little deals they've done where they're only available for a really short period of time. You can buy them without any like super strict time limit. There's one more announcement that should affect raids, should affect open world stuff, should affect world versus world stuff, and this is more skill effect culling. Now, the reason I say more is because this is actually something that ArenaNet addressed a long time ago, and in my opinion, sort of failed miserably to do. Either that, or I just really don't remember what the game was like at launch anymore. So, here's the situation. You guys will have heard me say this in my critiques of the raids, that the game is too difficult to read, that even with just 10 players, the amount of skill effects that go off, and specifically when you look at what does a lot of damage in the game and what meta people are running, some skill effects have really massive, obnoxious visuals, even though, like, mechanically and how they contribute to the fight, they shouldn't be that readable. So, for an example, Guardian Staff 1. Guardian Staff 1 has this huge, like, splash effect that fills up and flashes the entire screen. Just a single Guardian spamming Staff 1 to tag stuff while you're out in the open world trying to get your farm on really makes the game so much less readable, and who needs to see that animation? Maybe the Guardian themselves using it deserves to see it so they can see what they're doing in the fight, but for everyone else, it's really not something that's important. A tiny bit of splash damage going across 5 targets. These are the kind of skill effects that have needed a change for a long time. When I was streaming the raids, I had a lot of people watching on Twitch, and for those who were just sort of passerbys, people who were kind of interested in what it was like, I got a lot of messages over many hours of people saying, wow, this is totally unreadable. This game looks ridiculous. This looks like some kind of stupid, crazy bullet hell arcade game, and I have no idea what's going on. That spectatability isn't necessarily a huge issue when you're farming in open world, fine. But when it comes to the raids, and when it gets to the point where people actually can't see key effects that enemies are using and stuff that they need to dodge roll, it took me ages, for example, to learn how to just move out of one of the boss's most simple attacks simply because of the ridiculous skill effects going off everywhere. So it may not be super important when it comes to open world farming, but when it comes to raids and learning mechanics, that's absolutely important. When it comes to world versus world commanding and seeing what you can do, you can argue there's a skill cap element to it, but I think it's also important that battles are more readable, and especially when it comes to competitive player versus player and making the game spectatable, this is one of the things that's always dragged Guild Wars 2 down. Everything I've just said, though, isn't really new. This was something that I remember ArenaNet addressed in an update a long time ago, where they added the ability to cull certain effects. And I remember when that patch went through and they said that they were dropping the effects down, it didn't really seem to make much difference at all. It's just now if you have your options configured in a certain way, it's a very shotgun, oh, do I get to see the really important time warp this time? Or do I not get to see my allies time warp? It's never really been satisfactorily put into the game, let's put it that way. So anyway, there's a post saying that with Heart of Thorns, there's another skill effect culling update that's going on, and their intent is great. But we heard nothing by way of actual examples of what skills were being changed. You know, what I want to hear, for example, is that Bomb Kit 2, while it does a lot of damage for the engineer, and while it should be a big animation so that people can see a fire field, this thing's like a mini nuke that goes off on a ridiculously short cooldown. And a lot of people are using that at the moment because Sinister Engineer is in such a good place. And these bombs, specifically the Bomb 2, but a lot of them, are so huge that they really cloud everything else away. I would have loved to have heard ArenaNet say, yeah, this is one of the things we're nerfing away. But they generally just said stuff's getting culled down a bit, and certain effects that have giant visuals, even though they're not actually mechanically doing anything, like the visual lasts even after the last tick of burning on the Bomb Kit 2, for example. The examples of this, they're culling away as well. I hope Staff 1, as well, for its worth for Guardian, does get a big tone down. The big important stuff and mechanics of the game should be what have big tails, not, you know, random autos. Anyway, so that's the skill effect culling. If it goes through well, I'm pretty excited about it. Moving on, let's talk about Fractals. So there's quite a lot of stuff actually about Fractals. First of all, just a bit of a PSA for you guys. Thursday night at 11 PM for PDT. This is Pacific time. This is when the expansion comes out, an hour before the expansion comes out. At this point, Fractals are going down for maintenance. Why? Well, because Fractals are completely changing to a new system where they're singular islands and so forth at the launch of the expansion. So an hour before, they're getting rid of Fractals. If you are in a Fractal run at that time, it's likely you're going to get kicked out in the middle of the run. So don't risk it. Don't play Fractals an hour before the expansion goes live. Second of all, though, about Fractals, they did confirm and talk about something that was way in the back of my mind. This is Fractal leaderboards. Oh, yes. So, who remembers this? We had Fractals released, then we had word that Fractal leaderboards were coming for the longest time, and then so many of their plans for Fractals fell through. We had a patch that added a couple of new Fractals, and the leaderboards were going to be coming then, but they never did in the end. And so, with Heart of Thorns, Fractal leaderboards were said to be coming. There's been a statement here that says, no, they're not coming with Heart Thorns. It's going to come a little while later. They have a bigger, new plan for what they want to do with it that's hopefully more fun. I mean, I'd forgotten that this thing was even a part of Heart of Thorns in the first place, so this doesn't upset me too much, but I do find it funny that poor Fractal leaderboards keep getting pushed back and back and back. So, changes for that on the horizon at some point too. Next thing I want to talk about isn't really from ArenaNet. It's from a friend of mine who's been talking to me about this for a long time and is generally just one of the coolest fan-made things I've seen come out all year from Guild Wars 2. And I really recommend you guys check out. It's a guy called Vasberg, who you've probably heard of in the community before. Does incredible work at emulating ArenaNet's art style. I think he's trying to land himself a job at the company. Anyway, he put up a website just before Heart of Thorns. Obviously, a account that doesn't really have much to do with this expansion, but with some incredible art like you can see in the background right now, where he blends like animations and movement stuff with actual arts. It's kind of an interpretation of what Cantha would be like in the modern day of Tyria. And I'm not going to show you all of the art there, just because if I do that on this video, there's basically no point to go to the website. But it's really fascinating, and after the video's over, if you want to check it out, it's something pretty cool to do, so that's down there. Alright, so the last thing I do want to say for this news video is on the topic of hero points. There's got a lot of discussion from people in the community, and I kind of want to just throw my hat in there a little bit and explain to you guys the whole situation. So we've been in a bit of a weird place with hero points, haven't we, guys? At first we heard that we were going to be required to do some map completion to max out our base character. And then some people said they didn't really like that idea. I said I did like that idea. The idea seemed to be that by getting to level 80 and doing a lot of map completion originally in Tyria would get you most of your stuff, and then when the expansion came out, there'd be a bunch more skill challenges in the new maps, and you get those specifically for your elite spec. But ArenaNet changed things. Now, some people will tell you that they only changed stuff because of community complaints. People saying, oh, I don't want to have to grind. Grind here, by the way, meaning play the game. I don't want to grind to unlock all of my character. I just want it straight away. So a change was actually made that means that instead of needing any of the hero challenges in the base world, instead of needing any of them, all you need is to hit level 80. And a lot of people with many alts were very happy about this. But it did, of course, now mean that all those extra skill challenges you got from world completion now were basically worth nothing. They didn't mean anything until the expansion came out, and then you could spend them on your elite spec. And so people like the idea that if they got map completion now before Heart of Thorns, they could have the elite spec completed too straight away. The numbers have been revealed and show that this isn't actually the case. I will just point one thing out though. ArenaNet did explain a long time ago why the change was originally made to allow you to max out your entire core class just from hitting level 80. And it actually had nothing to do with these weird ideas of grind. It was more because as they transitioned from the old system to the new system, they didn't want people to be in a situation where they were like level 60 or something, had basically no map completion at all, and then when they swapped to the new system, they wouldn't even have enough to have the original build that they originally had. So that was one of their primary motivations for that change in the first place, came from a red post. Anyway, so what are the specifics with the potatoes? What exactly we've got here? And this is something I'm fairly happy with. Well, okay, first things first, and this is pretty good news. For the World vs. World pure players, ArenaNet are still trying to cater, and what they've done is they've made it so you can unlock your entire elite specialization and earn hero points and skill challenges entirely in World vs. World. The way they've done this is they've made it so that as you rank up, basically, and as you spend badges of honor, you can buy these consumables, which when you double click them, unlock a random hero challenge somewhere in the real world. So if you've got enough of them, you just keep double clicking through them, it will randomly fill up your actual Tyrael world map with all of those completed, give you the hero points you need to be able to complete your elite spec. Because of this change, and because they don't want people to automatically have the elite spec as soon as the expansion goes live, just because you're a world versus world player instead of PvE, they are converting liquid world versus world XP. You know, these items, like you can get a drop of it, a glob of it, a keg of it, and so forth. They're converting those into boosters when Heart of Thorns comes out, so that people in World vs. World who's got tons of them stacked up have an unfair advantage over everyone else. So that's a pretty big change, but it is a good change because it means you can stay in World vs. World and get all this stuff unlocked without being forced into Maguma Jungle. So let's ignore World vs. World for a second. Here are the stats. It costs 400 points to max out the entire Elite Specialization line, but you don't need to finish the entire line to get access to all the mechanical stuff. The mechanical stuff comes earlier. So you don't need all 400 points, but let's assume you do want all 400 because you want the skin at the end, you want the rune, the sigil, so forth, right? Let's assume you want to go for all 400 points. Well, the Heart of Thorns areas, if you complete a skill challenge in those areas, instead of granting you 1 point, it grants you 10. So you actually only need to complete 40 skill challenges in the Maguma Jungle area to max everything out on a character that has no prior map completion and has literally just been tomed to 80. And that assumes that you've chosen to unlock all base skills and all specialization lines and all that stuff. If you skip out on that stuff and go straight to the elite specialization, then you can theoretically get there even quicker. So it's about 40. If you have a level 80 who has map completion as well, or at least skill point completion for the map, then I think you only need 19. You only need to do 19 of the challenges in the jungle to get the entire line. But at that point, I think you're covered for the mechanical stuff anyway. So in my opinion, I think this is absolutely okay. I wanted that experience of going to the jungle and feeling like doing the hero challenges in the jungle were actually progressing me and making me stronger. But I do understand some of the concerns. I think most of the concerns come from people who want to make revs, tome them to 80, and also wanted Herald instantly. And in that situation, yeah, suddenly you're like, oh, well, I've got to do a little bit more. But, I mean, come on, especially when it comes to the jungle, this is all new content anyway. I'm not cringing at the thought of finding the new places and exploring the new areas and getting the new map completion stuff, because I've never done it before. So that's kind of my opinion on it. I think overall there was a lot of discussion, because once again, this kind of was revealed in a post, and then there were lots of dev clarifications, and now I think most of us are in a position where we see the way that it all works. So there you go, guys. That's pretty much the final little bits of news, the last little morsels and tidbits before Heart of Thorns releases. I'll try to have something good for you guys as a video tomorrow. And I'd just like to say, if you've been following the news with me, we did a big video yesterday about you know, everything for those who have missed it. If you've been following me most of the way through this year, thank you so much. I mean, we have got through a hell of a lot. This is actually the last video on a new playlist on my channel, which contains every, like, Heart of Thorns related video before the expansion came out. And it's going to feel really good to have that complete now. This is how we cap it off. I guess that series starts somewhere around the Easter egg trailer at the end of Season 2. Oh, what a ride. That is a lot of videos in there. I will make a bigger announcement about this tomorrow, but ArenaNet have been giving out like crap tons of gems. You guys know I've got competitions and stuff going on, and what I'm going to try and do over the coming weeks after Heart of Thorns comes out is, instead of blowing all my gems immediately now at launch, I don't see the point in doing that, there's going to be lots of like mini giveaways on most of my videos. So if you keep watching even after launch in these next coming weeks, there should be plenty of opportunities for us. But thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.